All right, we have a Futures game recap to go through, and it's, of course, going to be a little bit more of just using the players as talking points and things that maybe we noticed, because at the end of the day, it's only a couple at-bats and maybe some batting practice. Not too much to take away from there, but there was some, and then we're going to talk about some things off of that, because there was a lot of interesting conversations that extended from this brief little things that we saw. Of course, I'm Aram Layton. We've got Elijah Evans as well. We're doing the classic Airbnb, recording from two different spots in the same house because we're setting up for the draft stream right now. That's going to be the priority in terms of our set. But aside from it being really hot yesterday, it was a wonderful Futures game experience. We got a little bit of everything. We got a switch pitcher. We got a 3-run shot left on left, which I know you weren't as happy about in a vacuum, but also some stolen bases. We got some curse words mic'd up. It was everything you could want.
Yeah, it was fun, man. I mean, it was definitely low scoring affair. I feel like that's how the Futures game has been in general in recent years, but definitely some good takeaways. I mean, even BP itself, just watching some guys put balls into the chop house and above the chop house was really fun. So we got a good taste of everything as we kind of just got into rolling with just getting the weekend started really.
So we'll save some of the BP. Like I said, I know we are going to go in order of some of the names. So I won't talk about all of the BP right now because I know we're going to talk about Josue Briceño, but yeah. Carter Jensen isn't on the list there, so I figured we might as well start with just what we saw from him BP wise.
No,
so dude, he's got some crazy power, and we knew that there's plus raw there, no doubt about it. And I've seen Jensen play, and I've seen Jensen run into some homers, but I've never really seen Jensen take BP, and also not in a major league stadium where I've reference points because I've seen big league BP in there, before games. We're also comparing it to the other prospects there, and I mean he was hitting some absolute no doubt bombs over the chop house. It was him and Lazaro Montes at the end there of BP. We're having a little friendly competition and going back and forth, putting them over the chop house. The difference is Carter Jensen 6'1", 210. Lazaro Montes, whatever his listed height and weight, I still don't believe. He's got to be 6'6", 250. I don't know what he is. But Jensen's got some crazy power. And looking at the data, 55% hard hit rate this year is ridiculous. 107 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity is also ridiculous. And aside from Owen Casey, you could argue that Jensen came into this game as hot as just about anybody after a slow first few games in AAA. He's really been scorching of late. I think he had a stretch of 7 games where he had maybe 5 or 6 home runs. The only issue with him is when you get into game time, he starts to get a little bit heavy on that front foot, bat drags a little bit, and that's where the four-seamers have really given him some trouble. But in BP, when he's not getting heavy on the front foot and not drifting as much, you see what could be easily plus power, maybe more than that, which I think makes it really exciting when you think about the catcher archetype, 22 years old. If he can just find a way to be a little bit more consistent against four-seamers, I think that was enough to make me rethink and maybe think that raw power could be closer to 65 grade.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, he just turned 22. He just got to AAA, and in his first 13 AAA games, like you said, 6 homers in that span, an OPS over 1,000 since he got to that level, right? So I think, of the 3 catching prospects in Kansas City, is this the heir to Salvi? Because it kind of looks like he very much could be, and there's still some room to grow, as you said. He's still rocking a pretty high strikeout rate at this point, and there's still some slight concerns there, but it looks like he could be, a legit catcher for Kansas City here in the pretty near future at this point.
Well, he's definitely started to get a little bit of a head start on Blake Mitchell because Blake Mitchell's been hurt, just got back, actually had a really nice game the other day as he's starting to settle back into high A, but Jensen's already in AAA. So it seems like he's going to be the guy that gets the opportunity next. And it makes me wonder, you don't want to sell low, so to speak, on Blake Mitchell, but Blake Mitchell has a good couple weeks here, first-round pedigree, crazy tools as well. If the Royals want to buy with some control here and maybe address some of that big league roster gaps that they have, Mitchell could be a guy that they end up feeling okay moving off of because they have so much catching depth in that system overall. It is an interesting conversation because you'd probably argue that Blake Mitchell, probably the defensive upside is a little bit more immense, but in terms of what you'd look at in terms of the hitting side of things, what would be the big separator? It would be Blake Mitchell's power. At least that's what you would have thought a year and a half ago. Now seeing that Jensen hits the ball nearly as hard, if not just as hard, now even flashing maybe harder, you could maybe argue that that gap has been closed. And Blake Mitchell dealt with some catch and throw issues last year, even though he has an absolute rocket for an arm. So you look at Jensen's defense, and he may not be the receiver, may not have quite the tools that Mitchell could one day have, but he's also already in AAA. So I do think it creates an interesting conversation here. You also have Ramon Ramirez, who I've liked for a long time, down in low A. He's starting to settle in, 843 OPS. The defense has come along a little bit too. I do wonder if they trade from this catching depth that they have throughout the system.
Yeah, 100%. They definitely could. I mean, I don't think Kansas City's buying. We've talked about that a little bit. But if they were to, even if it's next year, right, you have the ability to potentially trade a Mitchell or Ramirez, and you still have a pretty good setup there with two of those three.
You want to walk us through the players that you want to talk about most, and we'll just kind of go through it?
Yeah, we'll just run through his players, and we got a couple questions from our Twitter of just people that were excited about the Futures game and getting, looking forward to all of this. We'll start with Josue De Paula, and that's somebody that we kind of have to go with first. He's the MVP of the game, 3-run homer that won the game essentially for the National League off Noah Schultz. De Paula, we saw him in the outfield earlier. He looked really good in the pregame in the outfield too. This is a guy who just keeps hitting, man. He really does at every level, and that home run was pretty impressive. It was definitely a miss of a slider from Schultz. I mean, it was pretty hung there for him, but left on left, any slider, even if it's a miss, is still an impressive swing there. He took it at 416 off the bat at 109 for De Paula, and it's just a great swing to put on a ball for a guy who, is still 20 years old. I feel like we've been talking about Josue De Paula as a high-end prospect now for 2 years. Yep. But he's 20 years old in high A, and he's rocking a 830 something OPS, a 139 WRC plus. He's getting homers, he's stealing bags. He's 26 stolen bases already in 70 something games this year. Like, he's just another one of these guys who just continues to rise, and I think he's been just kind of steadily rising up the top 100 now for 2 years almost.
The theme on that swing, and it kind of what extended out thought process for me was like, that's a really tough left-on-left matchup, as you alluded to, especially with Schultz and the slider that he has, whether it's located well or not. And the interesting aspect of that is that Josue De Paula has actually been a reverse splits guy this year, where against lefties, he's a 987 OPS. He's hit 5 of his 10 home runs, and obviously a smaller sample size, being that you're going to see more righties. What's fascinating is he's hitting the ball harder against righties, but he's hitting the ball at better angles and more consistently contact-wise against lefties. And I think that's going to translate well because, as you saw, like, De Paula doesn't need to swing out of his shoes. He's going to, if he catches a ball at the right angle, even with the left-on-left kind of, it wasn't a really aggressive swing, he can hit it out of the yard pretty easily, and that's what we've seen. But I thought it's fascinating. Left-on-left, he has a 90th percentile of 101 miles per hour, where against righties, he has a 90th percentile of 106. Yet, against righties, he has a 770 OPS, and against lefties, he has a 987 OPS. I would actually be very encouraged by that because he's hitting the ball extremely hard against righties. He's going to start hitting it at better angles and a little bit more consistently. The end-zone contact rate's about 8% lower against righties because you figure the velocity that he's seeing, like the average fastball velocity against lefties he's seen this year is 91.7 versus righties is 93.4. So it's probably just a little bit of that. But the fact that like he is hitting the ball at the right angles left on left, that's the hardest part. Usually guys are going to leak out. They're not going to be able to stay back on it. The path may not be conducive to that. I think that's a really, really good sign because, again, a 51% hard hit rate, 52% against righties is going to translate into more production and less dramatic splits. So there's a question we're going to talk about later of like who has that like superstar kind of energy to them. And I think De Paula definitely fits that description just by the way he carries himself. He looks the part, and he obviously rose to the occasion in this game.
Yeah, and obviously like a pretty electric home run trot. For those who didn't see it, you should definitely check it out. I don't know why they had these guys mic'd up, to be honest, but
mic'd up with all the way. You've got 19 and 20-year-olds.
Yeah, De Paula delivered that was going to happen. He ripped a few bombs in multiple languages, which is pretty entertaining as he rounded the bases on that home run. But in general, just a great swing he put on the ball, and a guy that is maybe a little bit less talked about than a lot of the other names we're going to mention here, and is still, regardless, like a top 20 prospect in baseball for a reason, for sure.
Yep.
The next guy we'll get to is JJ Wetherholt. Went 1 for 4 on the day in terms of the actual results, right? So it was a double in the gap and then 3 hard hit balls. But every at bat was just a good at bat, man. And JJ Wetherholt, like just watching him swing and watching just the way he looks in the box, like we talked about him I think twice already on our Heat Sheet episodes together. And like this is a guy who just every time I look at him, and this is the first time I've seen him play in person actually, it just looks better and better. And it looks like a guy who, if the Cardinals are in a playoff push, man, I would not be shocked. And if not, then it's definitely next year for Wetherholt because he is dominating all season. And this was nothing, this was very much the same. Even though it was only 1 hit, it was still just really impressive at bats from him this whole game.
Oh, yeah. And I think what we saw, the swing that he took backside, I think encapsulates why I'm not worried about the lack of maybe top end exit velocities. Because I think the one pushback I'll see from people sometimes is like, oh, but the power. Like, how much power is in there? And look, he's not going to pop 114s. He doesn't need to because he hits the ball hard consistently, and he hits it hard enough. Hard hit rate of 47%, which means like he's getting 95 pluses off more than enough, and he's hitting the balls at right angles right now. Like it was a little bit of a high ground ball right in the beginning. That's normal for guys as they get acclimated, and now you're seeing him drive the ball in the air to all fields. The approach was always going to be there. The field to hit was always going to be there. And if he's not hitting the ball 111, 112 miles an hour, it's fine because he's hitting the ball 95 plus so consistently. And I thought that backside double was a perfect example of that. He's not pulling the ball 110. He's not getting the just absolute best swing off, but he's catching the ball deep. He's got the bat speed. He's backspinning it, and it's carrying into the left center gap, and it's extra bases. And I think that's going to be what he's able to do. He's going to sneak his homers out pull side. Some of those are going to still float out backside. He's still going to hit his 15 homers, but I think you're going to see this guy hit a ton of doubles, and that was just a perfect example of he can still, as long as you can go the other way and beat the outfielders over the head, I'm not worried about power, and he's got enough.
Yeah, 100%. I think watching him, you kind of alluded to this, but like he's a guy I could see like being a top 5 in doubles guy for like 10 years. Like that's the type of profile it looks like, and it's not just like there might not be that high end power of some other names we're going to mention here, but there's enough for him to be an extra base machine and to get on base at a really high clip. But also, it's not just singles. It's not just a guy who's going to only hit you singles. Like he's going to get his extra base hits and he's going to run into homers and that backside double was great. It was one of the better swings of the day, I thought.
He's going to walk a ton, too. I'm sure it won't happen as much at the major league level, but more walks and strikeouts this year, in your first full pro season, moving through the minor leagues pretty quickly, already in AAA. I think that says a lot about the approach. I think it's one of the better approaches you've got in the minor leagues. And then, especially against righties, he really gets comfortable there. And I think the big reason why I think he's going to have a lot of success is he does not expand against changeups. And, left-handed hitter, how are you going to get him out? If you're a right-handed pitcher, usually it's going to be, a quality changeup, and that just hasn't been an issue for him. He's hitting 345 against changeups this year. So, and rarely swinging and missing and rarely chasing. So I don't even know what the game plan would be right now to get JJ Wetherholt out other than just try to blow it by him, at the top, which again, he's quick enough to get to him. So I'm excited about him, and I do think he is a guy that could get up there and help them if there's a spot.
Yeah, definitely. The next guy I mentioned is Kevin McGonigle, who, went 0 for 2 yesterday, so you wouldn't think it would be, it wasn't a particularly impressive game necessarily. McGonigle, between his batting practice and what we saw from him in just BP and then his line drive, opposite field line drive out. We don't. It's not like we're trying to highlight an out too much, and it might sound a little silly from us, but like McGonigle's BP was crazy, man. Like he was putting balls near the chop house, and this is a guy who's maybe 6 foot and is one of the smaller dudes in this lineup. And then in the game, he takes a ball basically at his neck, opposite field off the bat, pieced line drive at the left fielder, sure, but like I don't know how he even got that swing off. Nonetheless, to be a really sound line drive on that. McGonigle's just so fun, dude, and I think you've been the high guy on him for a long time, for a little bit now for sure, and like he just was so impressive to see in person and just see the swings he took.
I've been one of the more adamant about like this guy has more juice than you think, but I was still pretty floored about just watching him put balls off the chop house. But it was like off the chop house and then dead central by the waterfall, and I mean just to be able to do that when you're still a hit first guy is really, really exciting. And I think you've seen him really grow into more power this year as well, and that was on display in batting practice, and then I think even through that line out to left field, to be able to turn the barrel up there and get on plane, his barrel control and ability to get on plane at all these different spots is so ridiculous, and it's just. I think that's the best. He was the best pure hitter in the game, obviously, because I say he's the best pure hitter in the minor leagues. But I mean, this dude's rocking a 66% hard hit rate against 4-seam fastballs. So particularly at the top, you are just going to struggle to beat this guy. But what we also have continued to see is that his B swing, he's still going to be able to hit the ball hard now, and he's still going to be able to get to so many different pitches at so many different spots. But I would say the most impressive aspect of it was how effortlessly he was putting balls off that front of the chop house or to dead center. And I know it's just BP, but this is a potential 65, 70 hit tool guy with great plate discipline that's now starting to flash plus raw power, which is crazy. And that's why I think that this very well could be the best prospect in baseball.
Yeah, 100%, man. Do you know what Kevin McGonigle's K rate is this season between the three levels combined? Do you know what the strikeout rate is on the year?
I thought it was below 10%. But
it's
I think
10 on the dot.
Yeah,
it's 10 on the dot. And over 13% walk rate while putting up the offensive numbers he's putting up. It's pretty crazy stuff. It's been crazy stuff.
And also, you put the ball in play that consistently. A lot of times, you're gonna have a high ground ball rate, 35% ground ball rate.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. It's been great. His teammate, and we're not going to talk too much Max Clark. Max Clark did steal a bag, got a single as well. Solid day for Max Clark too. But his teammate Josue Briceño is one that I think really stood out to all of us that were there watching, particularly before the game. In the game himself, he got a nice hit there. He got a triple actually in the gap, which I did not expect a catcher to be ripping a triple like that. But before the game, Briceño, you mentioned Carter Jensen earlier. The other guy that was putting balls in the American League batting practice, like legitimately in the top or over the chop house, was Briceño. Some of these swings he took were crazy. And this is a 20-year-old, another guy in that Detroit system who's part of that big three now, who just the raw power with him, like I was looking at him and we've had a pretty high raw power grade on him already, but like I was looking at him and I was like, man, this is maybe one of the better raw power guys in this entire, game of everybody, honestly.
Easily. I think the Arizona Fall League, as we've talked about, like really clued us into that. And then, you just see how effortlessly he's able to hit the ball hard in the air. Like it's really impressive angles, almost to the point where like he's going to be hitting, I think, some of his home runs at just like such a ridiculously high launch angle that still carry out that they're just going to be majestic. And I thought that's what a lot of them in BP were anyways, like just a lot of majestic homers. That the other side of it is he's also still got the bat to ball that I think stood out in the early going of his pro career. So you've got this it's still power over hit, but you've got this feel to hit that you don't expect from a 6'4", 200-pound, left-handed hitter. And to have that blend is really, really exciting. And I think that's why you look at his strikeout to walk rate, like it's nearly identical as well. That's pretty crazy given the power that he has. But yeah, I mean, I thought, you looked at Lazaro Montes' BP, and we'll talk about him, like some of the bombs that he launched, like when he got into him. But Briceño, it felt like it was just one after another. It was just pulled in the air, pulled in the air, pulled in the air, dead center in the air, dead center in the air. There weren't very many mixed in like rollovers or ground balls. It was just, he's got his swing, he's got his move, he's got his rhythm, and there's not a lot of moving parts, and he repeats it already really well for a 20-year-old.
Yeah, and it's super just raw, but there's still already a lot of refinement there for a guy who's that young, and especially a guy that's still kind of getting better at catching over time. He might not stick behind the plate, but he still is catching at this point, right? Even if he's at first, though, like it's the profile and the approach and power to still be a very good big league hitter, even at the less of a premium position like first.
Yeah, that's why he's top 100. Yeah. I was skeptical of the ability to stick behind the dish, and then you want to see a little bit more offensively, and then seen more than enough offensively where it's like, okay, well, if a guy like Xavier Isaac's still going to be, in consideration there, I mean, I think you could clearly argue now Briceño has surpassed him in terms of what he can do offensively, even if he's moving to first base, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, 100%. Next guy up is Konnor Griffin, who went 1 for 2 in this game. He had a nice single there. But we saw his speed on display, man. I mean, one of those stolen bases, he came off the bag, but like his speed going to second was crazy. Like he beat the throw easily. He just came off the bag because he was coming in almost too hot. But Konnor Griffin's tools were just on display as well. You know, it seemed like he's just he's a tool shed, as we've talked about many times. And he's got somebody that just, he came out of the game with a wrist thing, but it sounds like he's all good. Got hit by a pitch in the wrist, but it does sound, after what we heard, post game, that it seems like he's all good, which is good because the last thing we would ever want is someone to get hurt in the futures game. But Griffin, it was just cool to see in person and just see the athleticism on display and see him play shortstop as well.
He's a specimen. I wish we could have seen him run down some balls in center, like do a little bit of both. But I mean, dude, it's been really fun just watching him blossom into the player that he is. But he's also one of those players that you can't fully appreciate. Video doesn't do him justice. You see a 6'4", 210-pound, 19-year-old move the way that he does, who's as physical as he is, but still as athletic as he is. And in person, you can really, really appreciate it. And it's just, that's the guy that you take somebody who doesn't really watch baseball or isn't a huge fan or doesn't pay attention to prospects or whatever it may be. They can look at the field, watch him play. He doesn't even need to do anything well, and they're going to say, "Oh, that guy's going to be the big leaguer here." Like you don't need to do this for a living to identify Konnor Griffin, and I think that says a lot about just the natural ability that he has. But he's also now refined a lot of what he's got going on in his game, and that's why he's also in that number one prospect conversation.
Yeah, he's going to be a riser for sure. I know we've talked about it, but like I think it was we were rising him up the board when you were talking about the last top 100, and now it's like, okay, maybe it was even too low for him, and he's going to keep rising because it's just so much to dream on there for Griffin.
Oh, no doubt.
The next guy is George Lombard Jr. George Lombard went. He had a decent game yesterday. He had one hit and then a walk as well. So he went 1 for 2 with a walk. A nice double, and then walk, showed off a little bit of speed on the bases. Also had a great mic'd up moment when he stole second base. One of those classic moments there. But Lombard, has had a little bit of an adjustment period since reaching Double-A. I think it was obviously a bit of an aggressive push. Right, he starts the season incredibly hot in High A, goes off, but then goes to Double-A. I mean, he just turned 20. He got to Double-A when he was still 19 at the time, so really young for the level, and has kind of taken his time easing in there, but is still doing a lot of things well, and in this game you kind of got to see a little bit more of what he can be and what he will be, we think, but it's just going to take a little bit of time for Lombard to really keep getting adjusted at that level, I think.
Yeah, and he's definitely a player that's, I think, best enjoyed over larger samples, and he's still growing into, I think, the strength and the power, and of course has been quite challenged by the Yankees here to send him to Double-A so quickly. But the one thing I did notice is you compare him to a Konnor Griffin or some of the other guys, like the tools are not going to be quite there. And I mean, you knew that already, obviously, but the bat speed is an interesting thing to monitor here. Like I think he's going to naturally be able to hit the ball hard enough, and he's another guy that has just an elite approach, but when you're comparing him to some of the other guys that are in that tier 1 area of prospects at this point, that was the one thing that stood out to me a little bit more in BP and just kind of watching, and is the bat speed is a little bit lesser, I think, than some of his peers that are on that top end part of our top 100. So just something to monitor. I think that's something that's very teachable. I think the focus going into this year was more mechanical, getting right in terms of his swing pattern, and that has clearly worked, and he has clearly helped him because if he was at High A still, he'd be putting up monster numbers there, and people would be really excited. I think we've been probably a little bit gypped of that excitement because he's been pushed so aggressively, and he's surviving because of the approach. But I do want to see a little bit more violence in that swing. I can't lie, but I also understand that the focus going into this year was much more on the mechanical side, and it was successful in that regard.
Yeah. And I think it's a slight reminder, too, of, like, the jump from High A to Double-A, because we talked about this a bit before, but, like, that jump is big. It's probably, other than Triple-A to the bigs, like, the biggest jump in the minor leagues. Typically, that is a big separator when guys get to Double-A, and, like, he's so young. It's so early, and it's got time. So, like, if he's there for the rest of the year, and even if he starts next year in Double-A as well, like, there's still so much time. Yeah, so there's so much time. You're not in a rush there. And again, like, the Yankees have, yes, they would love to have a third baseman in the future. Maybe that's where he shifts, whatever. Like, whatever it's going to be for the Yankees, like, they don't need to be rushing him. I know this promotion, but like they've got time on their side when it comes to George Lombard. That's for sure.
No doubt.
Next guy up is Lazaro Montes of the Mariners. You mentioned him earlier a little bit just because the BP is crazy. And it was funny with BP with him because there was definitely some swings I saw where it was like he just completely got under the ball. And then there were some swings where it's like you see him actually get to it. Even if he was still under it a little bit, it was going out. And that was some of the craziest swings ever in BP because he would miss some and they would be homers into the fifth row of the outfield. Like, and that's where you just see that crazy amount of power. When you looked at the AL roster, when they were doing introductions, one thing that stood out to me is you've got Noah Schultz and you've got Keegan Gillies, who are listed at 6'10 and 6'9. Those two look like they were so high above all the other guys in the lineup until you get to Laz Montes, who's also in that realm. And yeah, he's 6'6", but like you said, he just looks gigantic. I mean, it's like, you don't want to, again, I don't want to hear the pro comps with him. We've talked about how silly some of those pro comps are with him, but the size is true, yes. Take away the baseball side. Let's not talk the comp baseball-wise. The size-wise,
I'll give you like raw power potential
for sure, for sure. But yeah,
just please. I'm actually going to complain about this on Twitter later after we record this. But like, because Josue De Paula got please stop comping prospects to Jordan. Please. Jordan is a unicorn of feel to hit and power that maybe somebody else will come along that can do that. But stop. Like, there's no point in comparing prospects to Jordan. It's just there's no point. It just because a big dude mashes from the left side doesn't mean we just go Jordan. It's not fair to the player, and it's also ridiculous. People don't realize how good of a pure hitter Jordan is. It's a rare hit power combination. That said, Laz, I mean the power, man. He has continued to grow into that, and it's not grow into it just physically. It's grow into it in a way that it translates into what he's doing game wise. And last year we talked about it. Like, I also think it was kind of similar to the conversation we were saying, where I think last year it was a little bit more of a focus of like, okay, I'm getting challenged a little bit. Like, I want to be a hitter, and he was. I mean, he was a 23% strikeout rate guy. I guess the contact rates would have probably suggested that he should have struck out more, but the approach really helped too. And he hit for some average, and he still got to 21 homers. So I think you felt good about that. I was a little bit surprised though, like only a 35% hard hit rate, so he wasn't getting to his power as consistently as you'd expect in terms of it was either a home run or a little bit too much weak contact mixed in. That hard hit rate's at 50% now. So I think he's found a little bit more rhythm with his swing, but there's a lot of moving parts. And I think that was the thing I noticed seeing him. There's a fair amount of moving parts, and I think that's part of the reason why, you get a contact rate that's about 65% this year. But what's abundantly clear from watching him is that the power and now this improved approach is going to be enough for him to be a good big league masher, in my opinion, even if the hit tool stalls out, below average. But right. I think he's got a chance to continue to come along there. He's made some gains contact rate wise this year, despite being challenged, at tougher levels. But I think there was no doubting that this guy is a monster physically and it can get into some elite power already.
Yeah, and even if it's a three true outcome guy, like that's a good piece. And if it's a 3 true outcome guy with 40 homer potential, 45 homer potential, right? Like you can live with that for sure.
That's why I keep saying like stop the Jordan thing, because now if he's Kyle Schwarber, people are disappointed, and that's a really, really good hitter.
That would be an awesome hitter from the Mariners. How many Mariners fans would be ecstatic to get even Kyle Schwarber light in that lineup? They would,
and now they won't be, because some of them are actually livid about that type of outcome that I've even potentially alluded to.
But that's a great outcome at the end of the day. And Montes, the power is so clear from it in person. Last hitter here to mention particularly, before we get into a couple of pitchers, is Slade Caldwell. And Slade Caldwell didn't do much at the plate yesterday. He went, I believe, he went 0 for 1. I think he only got one at bat there coming in. Made a ridiculous diving catch in center field. And I asked you during the game, I was like, what is Slade Caldwell's fielding grade at this point? Because this dude is, 5'7", maybe 5'8", 5'9", maybe I'm selling him a bit short, but he's a smaller dude for sure. But it's for that size, looks like a legit center fielder, and not just a legit center fielder, but a good center fielder.
Which is rare, to your point. Like, I think it's hard to cover a lot of ground, even if you're really fast, without your head moving a ton and whatever it may be, when your strides are a little bit shorter. And he can do it. His jumps are great. He's glides still, and you saw that on that diving catch, as you mentioned, coming in. Like that's why the floor is high with him. Super patient. He's going to draw his walks, small strike zone, and he's going to play great defense out there. I think there's enough sneaky impact there. Yeah, I think that the contact rates have improved as the season's progressed, but he's just such a high floor player. I think he's got a great chance to be, a regular center fielder. There's a lot of shades of like that Alec Thomas look to him, and you hope there's a little bit more consistency with Caldwell. But Thomas, I still think when he's going right is a really solid player. So just seeing the glove in center field was fun.
Yeah, definitely. He was just fun to watch, and for me, it was cool to just see because you look at him next to like Zaire Hope, Josue De Paula, and some of these dudes that are massive, and he looks like he's tiny next to them. But then he goes out and makes these plays and just looks like one of the best outfielders in this game and just in the minor leagues in general.
Yeah.
Going over to the pitching side, first one up is Jonah Tong, and it has to be because among everybody in this game, he's the most helium name, I think, of anyone. And we've talked about him a million times, so we don't need to dive into him too much. We started talking a little Tim Lincecum yesterday when we were watching him pitch because it is super funky. And, I've seen it in video, but it's a totally different look when you really see a guy like physically in person, and you get to just get a gauge. And that was a cool experience for me with a lot of these players that I've looked at videos of a million times, but haven't actually seen in person other than the 2 or 3 of these guys. Tong was just a super fun watch. We've talked about it a little bit, like, is he going to get to enough strikes to be a high upside starter? Maybe not, but, like, the stuff is so fun. It's so hard to read his pitches coming out of his hand with that delivery, and he looked great yesterday in that game and in his brief stint. Everybody was throwing only an inning max, right? Nobody was throwing much, but Tong threw the second inning for the National League. It was a 1-2-3 inning with the strikeout in there, and it was just really gross all around.
Yeah, he's just a blast to watch if you get a chance to watch him, at any minor league park or whatever it may be. Just because of those shades of Lincecum in the delivery and the fastball, just life that it has, and just the way that he throws and the way that you look at him, he's just not an imposing figure out there on the mound, but he's able to now run it up, into 96, 97 sometimes, and it's sitting in the mid 90s with crazy carry. And the changeup is outrageous, and if he can land it more consistently, that curveball is really impressive, the 12-6 curve as well, and he threw a couple really good ones in this game, and I thought that was fun too, because that over-the-top release, it's such an aesthetically pleasing curveball. He's just a fun watch, and even if he is a little bit sporadic with the command at points, I think that's going to be a guy that when he's on, you just know it, and it's going to be a tough day for the opposing hitters.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll keep talking about him probably in the future because it's just been so impressive all season. Another guy who too is really rising in terms of just how we talk about him, what the ranks are looking like for him this season is Gage Jump, and this was kind of my first good taste of Gage Jump as well. That fastball's awesome, man. I love the way the fastball comes out of his hand. It's such a low release point, but it's so pretty just the way it looks coming out, and he got a really nice whiff on it in that game. Again, limited sample of actually seeing guys. It was only, I think Gage Jump only threw 2 outs, right? It was 2 outs in 1 inning, and one of them was a strikeout, though. The fastball is just beautiful, man, and I know the arsenal itself is pretty deep. He's got this 2 different breaking balls, mixes in the changeup, but in general, more than anything, just watching the fastball come out of his hand and the movement it's got on it and the life to it, it's a really pretty fastball.
In person, you can really appreciate just the funkiness too, where there's this hesitation that he has, as he's winding that arm back, and it's just enough to throw off hitters' timing, and then you have the deception built in where it's that low release, high carry, but you pair the timing disruptor with that, and it just seems like a nightmare at bat from a 6-foot lefty. So that was fun to see in person. I had not really seen Jump throw since he's ticked up to 95, and that's what he's averaging now. And just to really be able to appreciate the way that he can throw hitters off timing-wise, I think this is what really stood out to me. And then you have the built-in deception and carry and pair of breaking balls that have been great for him all year. He came into the game with a little bit of a slow stretch and then really good 5-inning outing. I think they've slowed him down innings-wise a bit. He just had a little 2-inning outing the other day. So I think that's the one interesting thing is he's been so dominant through the start of the year, like so many 6, 7, some even an 8-inning outing, that he's thrown a lot of innings already, and he's ticked up. So he's definitely a candidate to maybe feel it on the back half of the year. But he looked fresh, he looked good there, and I'm just very interested now after that game, just thinking about it, like how they're gonna handle him, the Athletics, the rest of the year. But I think they'll probably be pretty careful with him.
Yeah, they should be because, like we talked about yesterday, like he could be in the rotation and be one of their better starters next season. So it's like whatever you do with him this year, keep him healthy, make sure he's in the right place, and have his arm in a good position going into 2026. Because like the A's need arms. That offense is pretty fun already, and for that team to be good, they're going to need some arms, and this is definitely one of those arms.
Yeah, and I was also just encouraged to see the velo. I know it was a short spurt, but like I think part of the reason why his last outing was short was in terms of the last outing before the Futures game was his velo was down in that one. He was averaging 92.8 through 40 pitches, and because of that, they yanked him through 2. Clearly, they weren't concerned about it. Just to see him throwing in the Futures game was great, and then just to see him kind of back up and throwing at a little bit higher velo. It seems like it's just, again, some second half fatigue after seeing a big tick up and throwing already way more innings than we've seen him throw. So I'm just excited to see him finish out, and then I think they're looking at next year as a guy that could potentially help them in the rotation.
Yeah, definitely, man. The next guy up was the switch pitcher. We got to mention him because it was just fun. Everybody gets excited to see that. He flipped the glove around for I think he only threw 1 or 2 pitches from the left side, but flipped the glove around briefly when he was facing a lefty. Jurrangelo Cijntje of the Mariners as well there. It's just cool to watch. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest takeaway was how good he looked from the right side. And you've said this many times that the right side is definitely the better side. 98.7. He was topping on the right side yesterday, and that was we've said that. He's upper 90s, but it's 99 from the right side almost. And also the breaking ball looked pretty good from that side as well. Had 1 inning, a solid inning in the second inning there for the American League with 2 strikeouts. And it's just cool to see the switch pitching aspect, but I think the more important aspect, as we've talked about it, is that right side looking like a legit arm.
Yeah, I mean, that's the really exciting part, right? That could be like a 70 fastball with the characteristics that it has. So that was what I was honestly more excited to see, but I know that for just the virality aspect and how exciting it can be to just get people to see the talent and just the unique players that we have in the minor leagues. It was cool to have him switch, and I'm pretty sure got an out right with the left arm. I think you got to fly out there. It's just crazy because you've got it's probably like a 45 grade fastball from the left side, and then you've got a potential 70 grade heater from the right side. So to see him up to 98.7 with those characteristics. This is a guy that I think as he continues to develop and throw more and just get more used to just being a full-time pitcher and maybe even stops throwing left-handed. I'm interested to see that could be a fastball that sits in the upper 90s, and if he's doing that with a pair of breaking balls and a changeup that's a work in progress, this guy can be an absolute monster.
Yeah, definitely, which is exciting to see as going forward. If it becomes the right side too, I think we talked about it. If he starts focusing only on the right side, it might get even better in terms of the stuff from one side if he really starts to hone in. It's almost like, in a weird way, when we have guys who are two ways in college and then they kind of hone in on one, and we've seen some of those guys, Nolan McLean's of the world, right, who just really start to emerge with one thing when they focus on it. It could be with Jurrangelo where it ticks up even more from the right side in terms of how good he is when that becomes the sole focus.
Yep, 100%. Because just having to think about throwing with 2 arms to double the bullpen throws, it's a totally different beast and different feels, different focuses, different grips. I think it's going to make a big difference when you can just focus on the right arm.
Definitely. Next arm up is Trey Yesavage. He got 1 out, but it was gross. It was a nice strikeout there. It was weird because I think they were just trying to get maximum innings for everyone. It seemed at first like it was like a weird injury pull, but we heard everything's all good with Yesavage, so hoping that's the case there. But it was 1 out, and it was a gross strikeout. And this is someone who has, had a great season. We've talked with him before, and just continues to rise. And it looks like Trey Yesavage can be, a big leaguer next season for the Blue Jays. And he was one of the better arms in last year's draft, and then fell off the radar a tiny bit, I think, comparatively to some other guys in the similar draft range to him. But now, it just keeps getting better throughout the season, and it was cool to see him just get that 1 really nice strikeout.
Hey, it ain't easy to strike out Wetherholt, and splitter, and then 4-seam fastball, and then that slider as well. So you gave him a little bit of everything, and you're just continuing to see that it's a really unique angle where you're getting the highest release in probably professional baseball, and then good carry fastball off of that. It may make the fastball play down a little bit, but it's going to make the gyro slider and splitter play up, and it's just a nightmare vertical, just tunnel and experience for hitters. And when you have JJ Wetherholt looking that uncomfortable, I think it says a little bit about your stuff. I think Yesavage is going to be helping that Blue Jays team next year, no doubt. They don't need him right now at the big league level, but I wouldn't even rule it out this year as a guy that could maybe help them out of the bullpen if they wanted to do that. And the interesting thing is just seeing him in that 1 batter spurt is kind of what sparked that thought for me, because they're going to probably want to manage his innings. There were some conversations about his medicals, going into the draft last year, was part of the reason why I don't think he went as high as maybe some were expecting. If they want to taper off his innings anyways, that could be an option. I'm just interested to see. I haven't heard anything on that, but it would be something I would consider if I were Ross Atkins.
It's an interesting thing to consider. I mean, the stuff would play up for sure if you're trying to limit him in short spurts, right?
And he could just, if he goes fastball splitter out of the pen, I honestly think tomorrow he could be a pretty good seventh inning guy for you in the big league level.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there, but it's been great to see him. Cool to see him get that one strikeout on Wetherholt. We can talk about Lombard players. Obviously, this game was filled with talent. We had 29 of the JB top 100 in this game, right? Which is crazy to kind of put in perspective, right? That's almost a third of all of our top 100 that played in this game, which just makes it such a cool experience. And I wish the Futures game got even more attention because it is such a cool showcase of just the future of Major League Baseball. But aside from just the players, we got a couple good questions on Twitter, and we were just, I posted something on the call page just saying, hey, we're at the Futures game. Let us know if you have any questions, and we got a few really cool ones. One of which was, well, who is the first player in each lineup and pitching staff that could reach the bigs the soonest? Because we've got all these super amazing prospects, but some are like 18 years old and are a long ways away. The Leo DeVries of the world, the Konnor Griffins, right? Those guys are nowhere near the bigs. There is some guys, though, that we mentioned, you say with Yesavage, there's a handful of guys on both rosters that could be big league pieces either down the stretch this season or as soon as next season for sure. Who are some guys that stand out to you on each side that could be a real contributor very soon at the big league level?
Well, Harry Ford's obviously in like his 14th Futures game and playing well in AAA, but obviously you look at the big league situation, it's a little sticky right there for him to get an opportunity anytime soon unless something terrible happened. So I look at CJ Kayfus, who with the Guardians has just swung it well. Just does not slow down in AAA. The underlying data keeps getting better, but it's also a team that I think is going to sell, right? And if they're selling, you have an opportunity for Kayfus where I think they're going to trade Carlos Santana. Kayfus could plug in to the first base role, or if they move an outfielder, he can plug into a corner outfield spot. That starting lineup, none of those guys are close, but they're all extremely exciting, aside from Owen Casey, who's also blocked. But Casey, thing with him is, if he got traded, like, you could make a case that he could get the Padres, who may not maybe want to make a huge trade. They could end up making they wouldn't do it. It just wouldn't happen because the Cubs wouldn't do it. But you could argue that like if they could somehow acquire Owen Casey, that would be an upgraded corner outfield right now too. Like he's that established at this point in AAA that some teams that need corner outfield help like almost could look for Owen Casey. Unfortunately, it wouldn't make sense for the Cubs. But the point being, like that's a guy that is so ready. It's just he's another victim of circumstance where they're just full out there in the outfield. So if the Cubs are buying, any team that acquires Owen Casey that's a seller, I think would have no purpose in putting him straight to AAA. It would make sense to just put him straight to the big leagues. But also, if somebody goes down, if Ian Happ gets hurt or somebody goes down in Chicago, Casey's the first man up. He's the next guy to go up there and help them. So I think that's the obvious other answer as well. And he crushed the ball backside as well. The double that was 106. He's been just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Carson Whisenhunt is another one to mention there, who hasn't had the best of years, but I do think if San Francisco needs some arm help, he could be a guy we could see in the bigs at some point later this season, just because he's kind of more of that league-ready archetype, even though it hasn't been one of his better years at this point.
Yeah, he's getting PCL'd a little bit. He's had some good outings this year. If you have it a home game, you go from the PCL and then you go to playing in San Francisco where it's the complete opposite and it benefits you a little bit more. I think if to your point, if they needed a spot start, I think they'd be fine with rolling him out there. The changeup's going to play. He can go change up heavy and give you 5 quality innings and get by. So I think Whisenhunt's shown enough this year to be a guy that absolutely could get a call up pretty soon too.
Yeah, another sneaky mention. I don't think it's this year, but Sal Stewart just got promoted to AAA following the Futures game. This is a guy who kind of tore through, a really hard league to hit in the Southern League in AA. And now you look at him and he's in AAA, and the Reds are on the verge of being borderline wildcard contenders. Could they use a Sal Stewart? They just optioned Christian Encarnacion Strand. I'm not saying it might be a little aggressive, and he still is, I think, 22 maybe, or 21, I think, right now still. But at the same time, like Stewart, it may be September, and if not, it's definitely early next season.
I wouldn't rule it out. I think them bringing him to triple right now is probably them not ruling it out either. This guy's a natural hitter, man. Like he's taking balls up and out of the zone, off the wall the other way. He's crushing balls down in it. Like it's really hard to find a blue zone for him, and that's a guy that I think could be pushed a little bit more aggressively. I think if they need an offensive spark, you put that ridiculous hard hit ability and line drives to all fields ability, and it's a great American ballpark, he could be a spark plug for you. And I think if they needed that spark, I wouldn't rule that out at all either.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. The last question we got to go here, and then we'll wrap it up for the Futures game recap, is what you mentioned earlier a little bit. Which player gives superstar energy? And I think the first one that stands out is Josue De Paula, because we talked about it earlier. Not just that home run, just in general, the way he carries himself, the way his at-bats go, even after his home run. He hit the LeBron celly after the home run, too, which I know is like a little overplayed probably to some people, but I think it was pretty cool, honestly. And I think he gives that energy. There's a lot of guys.
He's also related to Stephon Marbury, so like he's got superstar energy in a nutshell.
Yeah, he's got that. Who are the other guys for you in this game that you kind of? There's plenty you could name, honestly, that give you that superstar energy.
Yeah, I mean, Konnor Griffin, of course, but that's just on sheer ability. I honestly think he's kind of like a robot out there in a good way. I think I'm always going to say Zyhir Hope and just the explosion that he brings to the game and just the way that he looks out there. He's a freight train. You're going to get that feeling from Max Clark, but I think in terms of like the superstar output, I do lean towards like a Zyhir Hope and a De Paula and a Konnor Griffin. I think those are the guys that I really gravitate towards the most. In terms of the superstar, I think you look at like a Lazaro Montes just because he's so big and so powerful. You could make that case a little bit too. But if I was going to zero in, Konnor Griffin gives me that like Bobby Witt type of. I've talked about it. I'm not trying to comp him to Bobby Witt at all, but that type of just ball player, does everything well. It's almost annoying type of superstar energy, and just does everything so robotically clean. So like that's probably my answer there. And then Zyhir Hope, just because he's got the moxie. And he's got the ridiculous power, and when he connects, I mean, there's nothing quite like it. He took one in the back in High A a week or two ago. There was a little bit of a contentious, series between Great Lakes and West Michigan, and I think they were getting some retaliation both ways. And Hope grand slam right after that. First, he took the hit in the back, jogged to first, no problem. Next at bat, grand slam, and just took a long stare at it and had some fun with it. Like he's got that energy to him for sure.
Yeah, I can see all those for sure. I think those are probably the names that stick out the most there. Well, this has been good. It was a fun Futures game. We've got a lot ahead of us. It's as we record here. We've got the draft coming up tonight. We've got Home Run Derby tomorrow. We've just got a ton of fun stuff we are doing here in Atlanta, and it's gonna be cool to keep watching. And then there's gonna be so much excitement here in the next few days.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the draft stream. It'll already be out, but you can kind of watch it like retroactively. But we're breaking down all of the picks and all that good stuff. And then also on Monday we'll be at I was gonna say Hit Seekers. We're going to be at Cards HQ in Atlanta. It's only a mile from the Battery. They're nice enough to let us hang out there. We're going to be auctioning off signed canvases. Keep up with our socials there. One of them is a Max Clark painted canvas. Just had him sign it. That was awesome. Really excited about that. My girlfriend Ellie painted that, and then we have Kyle Tucker, Corbin Carroll, Walker Buehler canvas. I'm really pumped about it. The large part of the proceeds go to Joe DiMaggio's Children's Hospital, and then several other the players' charities of their choice. So stay tuned for that. Those auctions should be live by the time you're listening to this, and you could probably find them on our socials. But I'll also try to link it in the episode description by the time those are out as well. So you could probably find the auctions in the episode description. Goes to a great cause, and we're going to get it authenticated for you and everything. The Max Clark one is really cool, and he autographed that real clean with his number on there and everything. But stay tuned for that. Also, if you're in Atlanta, come hang out with us at Cards HQ right by the Battery. We'd love to see you. That's probably all I got right now. We're going to have a draft recap, all that good stuff. Going to be a blast. Very much looking forward to that. So stay tuned. As always, thank you for listening. Look forward to talking prospects with you tomorrow.